brothers and sisters, comrades and friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm so happy that so many of our volunteers have managed to get here tonight for the official launch of what I can confidently say is the best election headquarters that anybody in Batley and Spen has ever had. To thank the owner, Brother Jabbar, and those that made it possible for us to acquire for 1 month this wonderful headquarters. At the end of the campaign is going to be a Turkish restaurant. So I must express from all of you that you will at least once come here and eat. I thank you very much for all the work that you have already done, and in anticipation of all the work I'm confident you're going to do. This is an historic occasion. It's a historic opportunity for the people of Batley and Spen to send a message to the please across the region, across the country, and across the world. There will be people waiting up for this election result on July 1st all over the world, and that's not an exaggeration. Working class man from working class parents in a different part of this land to you, but we all speak the same language. My father was a factory worker, but his father was a mill worker, and his father was a mill worker, and his father was a mill worker. And actually, because I'm from which is known as a woman's town, were also mill workers, and so were so many of you, grandparents, and all of us of this great Britain of ours. I love our country. Our party loves this. We are not a part of the woke identity politics, liberal left, that often seems to hate Britain and hate the British people. The British people are increasingly hating them back, and that's part of their problem in the election. I fought to keep it together in 2014 in the Scottish independence referendum, and again this year. I don't believe in breaking up countries, and I'll never stand by while Britain is broken, because only together do we have the requisite strength to make the changes in this country that we need to make. Because I love Britain, and I know that I'll lose some of you here, I was one of the leaders of the Brexit campaign, which triumphed in 2014. Actually, none of the other candidates, none of them so far, played any part at all in the campaign to win Brexit for Britain. Even the Conservative Party candidate, forgive me, I don't know his name, he's a councillor in Leeds. I don't think many people know his name. I googled him today. He did not say one word ever on the subject of Brexit. So if you're a resident of Batley and Spen that supported Brexit, know this. I was Mr. Brexit so far as this campaign is concerned. But whether you supported me on Brexit or not, all of us surely must agree that when the people voted for Brexit, they had to be given Brexit. Cynical, opportunistic campaign to cheat the people of that which they had voted for is completely unacceptable. And the number one villains in that piece were those that call themselves the Labour Party. They boxed Jeremy Corbyn into a corner and forced him to make Labour look like the Brexit party. And that's why along the Red Wall and into the north, so many millions of the Labour Party. They will never forgive the efforts expended by the leaders of the Labour Party to cheat them out of their vote. Because we believe in democracy, and that which the people vote must have. Now, that aspect of the plan to wreck Brexit was somebody called Sir Keir Starmer, to whom I shall turn in a few moments in another context. Keir Starmer got rid of Jeremy Corbyn as soon as they had managed to wreck Labour's 2019 general election campaign. It was more important to them to stop Corbyn than anything else. And they achieved it. And Corbyn is no longer. Imagine, just over a year ago, he was running to be the Labour Prime Minister. And later, he sits as an independent of Parliament. I think you should give him somebody to sit beside in the House of Commons on the front. But because we love this country, we're not prepared to see it go to rack and ruin. Whether through deindustrialization, the closure of industries, the closure of factories, the redundancy of workers, fire and rehire on lower pay and lower conditions. And we're not prepared to see it go to rack and ruin with a crime wave which is now reaching fever proportions. There was a headline in the newspaper today. 10 men, all of them teenagers, arrested after a weekend of mayhem in London, accused of murder, of carrying swords and fighting with them in public places, stabbing and shooting people. This cannot go on. We cannot allow our country to slip and slide into this kind of violent, antisocial mayhem. Somebody has to get a grip of the crime situation in this country. And that includes here in Batley and Spen, where we have, imagine, in this beautiful, formerly quiet, sleepy place, we've got a crime wave. We have well over 400 violent crimes a month in Batley and Spen. More than 400 crimes of violence and sexual crimes here in Batley and Spen. And what was the response of the authorities? To close the police station and put it up for sale. It's the first thing I saw when I arrived here. A crime wave, let's shut the police station. Let's make it harder to get police support when you need it. And so one of the major demands of this campaign is that taxpayers, as council taxpayers, demand our fair share of the police service. We deserve the protection of the police service. And this cuts across communities. Crime recognizes no colour, no religion. Crime affects everybody, and affects the poorest people most of all. So I want to be clear here that I'm going to fight for Batley and Spen across all issues and across all communities. I will not be one village, one colour, one religion, one race. I'll be the MP for every person in Batley and Spen if I'm elected on July the 1st. Now we have a problem with Sir Keir Starmer, or rather, he has a problem with us. After the deluge in Hartlepool just a few weeks ago, if Keir Starmer becomes the first opposition leader in history to lose 2 by-elections to the government within 3 months, he's a goner. It's curtains for Keith if he loses this by-election. And we make no apology for if the party continues under the leadership of Keir Starmer. It is headed for another cataclysmic defeat at the next general election. And that's bad for Britain. It's bad that Britain doesn't have an opposition. Every country needs an opposition, or it isn't a democracy at all. And Keir Starmer is a poor excuse for a leader of an opposition. It's not just that he shadows Boris Johnson on every major matter, Captain Hindsight, backs the government, then waits to see how it turns up, and then tries to backtrack. It's not just that. It's that Keir Starmer has appointed himself as the #1 champion of the crimes of Benjamin Netanyahu and the government of Israel. We will never accept any British Labour Party leader that declares themselves openly, unequivocally, without equivocation, that means without condition, as a defender of Israel. He cannot expect to continue to get the votes of people like us. He cannot expect it, and he should expect the opposite of that. If he loves Israel, we love Palestine. If Israel has a right to defend itself, so does Palestine have the right to defend itself. One is not legitimate and the other illegitimate. One is not an army and the other are terrorists. The Palestinian people are virtually defenseless against the bombing, the rockets, the missiles from the world's most powerful Air Force. The American Air Force is what's bombing the people of Gaza and killing their children. Sure, it's wearing Netanyahu's colors. It's the American Air Force's latest and powerful weaponry that is on millions of with nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, no exit out, no chance to become a refugee again, to find shelter. The Palestinian people are like fish being shot in a barrel. Now, I know Gaza well. Some of you, I can see 3 of you. were with me on the historic convoys that left England to break the siege on Gaza with hundreds and hundreds of trucks. I know Gaza well. It's the most densely populated place on the earth. There's no entry and no exit except on the Egyptian side at Al-Arish, which the Egyptian regime locks fast at the demand of Israel and the United States. So the Palestinians have nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. All they can do is appeal. I met a young girl during the last war, 2014, in Gaza. 10 years old she may have been, 11 perhaps, still at primary school. She asked me, I filmed her, you can see the video. Where is this? Why did they leave us alone to face? As she looked at the rubble that had been her house, I told her there is an ummah. It is billions strong, and in the hearts of the faithful in that ummah. They're bleeding for you, they're crying with you. I wish they could reach you to come to your side. But of the Arab things that surround you, they cannot. We can't give our blood. With toilet paper and basic essentials. But in Batley and Spen you can do something that nobody imagined you would have the chance to do. In Batley and Spen, just by putting an X on a piece of, you can send Palestine. It's not asking much. You won't have to put up with me for long. I'm old, but I have my children. I don't expect ever to see Palestine again. I'm banned, deported from Egypt, banned by all these regimes. I don't ever expect to see Palestine again. But if my 6 children can make it there, I hope the people will say, we remember your father. And I hope the people will say, we remember your father, the Member of Parliament for Batley and Spen, who came to our side just with on a ballot paper, which brought down Keir Starmer, the leader of the Israel lobby in this country. Wouldn't that be something? Couldn't we all say that to our own children? We couldn't do much, but what we could do, we did. It's an obligation. If you see injustice and you can raise your hand against it, do so. If you cannot raise your hand, raise your voice. If you cannot raise your voice, curse the injustice in your heart. Well, we have an additional possibility, and that is to send that message with that vote on the 1st of July. Now, I'm just like the other people here. I'm an ordinary man. I have skills that God gave me. I have experience that it has taken me 50 years to acquire. I served in Parliament for almost 30 years. First as a Labour Member of Parliament, then expelled by Tony Blair over the Iraq War, then defeating Labour in Bethnal Green and Bow, then defeating Labour again in Bradford West, And I want to defeat them here again in Batley and Spen, because our struggle will not be over until justice reigns across the world. I'm married like most of you. I have children like most of you. I have obligations like all of you. And I'm not asking much. I won't stand again here in 2.5 years' time. I'm only asking for your vote. I'm only asking to borrow your vote. Borrow it just once, so that we can send that message. And at the end of that 2.5 years, maybe some of those that were cheated out of the Labour nomination a couple of Sundays ago will get another chance to be the MP in Batley and Spen. But in those 2.5 years, I have many plans. One of them is this. It's what I did in Bradford West, and it's now established practice. I want to bring the school children from Batley and Spen on regular visits to the Houses of Parliament, so they can see democracy in action, so they can learn about politics right there in the chamber of the House of Commons. I did that in Bradford. Nobody had ever done it before. I'll do it here. Every one of your children will get an invitation from me to come on a school trip to Westminster. But I'm also going to do this. If God gives me breath, I'm going to do this. I'm going to set up a University of in Batley and Spen. Every year we will bring the top speakers from around the world to come here and teach us about the reality of the lives of the Palestinian people. My last word, somebody asked me today, a journalist, none present I should say, why? Well, first of all, the Holy Land is holy to me. And if it is running with blood and tears, that's important. No? Secondly, over 50 years of work on Palestine, I have thousands and thousands of Palestinian friends to whom I have promised that I will never give up the fight for their freedom, the fight for their rights. But thirdly, and this is something many times you may have seen my speeches on this, it was our politicians that were responsible for all of this disaster. When Britain, on behalf of one people, promised to a second people the land that belonged to a third people, even by the standards of empire, that was a pretty peculiar thing to do. And it's from that declaration by the British statesman Balfour that all of this disaster has ensued. And so if anybody in the whole world has a responsibility to fight with all of their might to redress that injustice, it is we here in Britain whose politicians caused it in the first place. So for all these reasons, I make absolutely no excuse. I retract not one thing about my commitment on this issue. I just say this. When I started it 50 years ago, next year, so 49 years ago, when I started this, you could have fitted all of the people who cared about Palestine inside that room. Now we are millions and millions and millions. in every town and city over the weeks. People erupting with their support for the Palestinian people. I stood still falling. Father wept in front of me over what he had just been watching. Tears are important. Prayers are important. But we have a third way. And that third way is July the 1st. I hope you'll join the campaign. I'm grateful for everything you've done so far. We have a real chance of winning this. A real chance. And the other parties all know it. If we, like Trojans for the next, if we speak to everyone we know, persuade everyone we can, and then make sure everyone gets out to vote on the 1st of July, we'll not just win, we'll win in a landslide that will never be forgotten in British politics. Wassalamu very much. I want to bring my good friend Tanisha Bramwell, my right-hand woman, who's joining the campaign officially now. Tanisha.
I could come on. Okay, I didn't plan on speaking. When I saw George's track record, I'm in this election. But what I've witnessed in Palestine, or just online, has just broken me. And he's the only one I believe will stand up and have their voices heard. And that is why I am so proud to support him. I also genuinely believe that he will better lives of the people living in Batley and Spen. I genuinely believe that he will. Our communities and our towns, they deserve someone to fight for them. We've seen the same faces for too long and nothing's changed. If you vote the same way, then expect the result. So please.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to you. Unless George wishes to make any concluding remarks. George is campaign manager in this by-election. Today, to knock on every door in this constituency, to let every home at least 5 times over, to reach out to your friends, your family, your contacts, and brothers and sisters that you've never even met before, your neighbours, people you spend money with, local people, because we don't have the money that the at this by-election. They can't get to come up and door knock for them, so they're asking people all in London to come up to canvass Kim Lidbetter. We haven't got their money, but we've got something far more powerful. We have you. Every person here tonight, every person watching this on the live stream from their home, we've got a people-powered movement. And so my plea to you all this evening, for all of the reasons George has outlined, please, if you haven't already, sign up to help the campaign, be it leafleting, be it door knocking, even just having a poster in your garden sends a message to the other parties, to your neighbours, that we will get George elected on the 1st of July. So sign up for a poster. If you are a volunteer, please join us for refreshments after your day. We'll be open morning, noon. So please, Come anytime, you will always be welcome, and you'll always be given a thick wad of leaflets to go and put out there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming this evening. Please do join us and form an orderly queue, I'm sure, for selfies with the man himself. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. But I'm starving. See you inside.